In today's review, we take a look at the Purifi SPK5 and I'll share my thoughts on how it sounds and tackle the question that everyone is asking. When you lower the distortion of a woofer, what happens and should we care? And with a warm welcome back to New Record Day, that is exactly what we're going to find out. Welcome back to New Record Day. My name is Ron. If you are into two-channel audio, consider yourself an audiophile or music enthusiast. Welcome home. Make sure you hit the subscribe button and bell notification so you know when the next video drops. In today's video, we take a look at the Purifi SPK5 prototype speakers offered by Purifi, which was sent for me to check out along with their do-it-yourself Class D amplifier, the Eval1 board. Now this review won't be a deep dive into the amplifier, but I'll mention this right out of the gate. The amplifier sounds wonderful, and I've used it with a wide range of speakers over the last few months while listening to it. Without a doubt, Class D has come a long way in having been a fan of the Encore NC400, which was also designed by Bruno Putzis? I'm sorry, Bruno. I don't know how to say your last name, man. I'm trying. Putzis? I'm an idiot. With that being said, I have been one of the hi-fi reviewers that believes we need to change the ridiculous mantra that Class D sucks. It doesn't. And yes, when done well, it can compete with some of the best Class A/B stuff out there, in my humble opinion. If you're interested, we are now offering exclusive Patreon content, and in this episode, I dive in deeper about the Purifi amplifier and make some direct comparisons of other amps that we have in-house. If this is something of interest, all the information that you need to sign up is down below, and thank you for your consideration. One thing that needs to be mentioned right out of the gate is this is a prototype demo speaker. I'll leave a link to a PDF that covers everything you would need to know about the speaker also down below. The design of the speaker is a passive two-way rear-ported stand mount, or I'd say larger bookshelf style speaker. Being specific, the speaker is just over 13 inches tall, 13 inches deep, and just over 9 inches wide. The woofer being used is the Purifi PTT 6.5 W0401A, say that 5 times fast, and the tweeter is a Mundorf AMT 21 CM2.1. The crossover frequency of the speaker is 3.2 kilohertz, and the port tuning is 30 hertz. Now, I have already let Purifi know my impressions, so let's get the cat out of the bag early and move on. I like this woofer a lot, and I want to talk about it quite a bit. The tweeter, not so much. Knowing the Purifi woofer is offered standalone and something you could buy and choose a different tweeter is a reason why I don't want to spend a lot of time, so let's get this out of the way very quickly and move on to the good stuff. So once I settled on a resting place for these speakers using LOTS, which is our speaker setup guide, also noted down below, I am typically left with the performance in the room. Essentially, if I've done my job, the speakers vanish, completely vanish, and what we have is that perfect illusion of everybody in the mix. With these tweeters, regardless of what I've tried, they kept calling attention to themselves. But it's not that the tweeters were bright. And in fact, we do see a sag in the response starting from 1K out to 7K. And sure enough, they actually offer a very clean spectral decay, so what the heck is going on? What I have noticed with more than a couple of AMTs in the past is there's something about how they produce sound that just seems to make it more difficult for them to completely disappear. In any event, while the overall tone of these tweeters was decent, they just weren't my cup of tea, and for many of you guys who I know will appreciate soundstage abilities, I don't think these are gonna be your cup of tea either. So the very first thing that I noticed when listening to these speakers in regards to both the heart of mid-band, mid-bass, and bass is there was great texture and tone. Paper cone offerings always seem to sound the most natural at presenting clarity, and these woofers provided me with what I'm looking for without much trouble at all. Knowing these woofers would set you back a cool $380 each, it's hard to declare that they are worth the asking price, but they do offer a sound that I quite like, And I could see myself building up a bookshelf with a totally different tweeter. Since I recently did a poll on my community page asking you guys what is acceptable bass, and the leading option in that poll is down to 40 hertz, these could potentially be the full enchilada for a lot of you guys out there, and that's certainly worth celebrating. The sum of the port and driver lead me to believe that in most rooms, you can expect bass down to the 40s with a similar configuration as what they've done here. I was curious, since I just reviewed the LS50 and LS50 metas, what these might look like back to back with those in the same position, and here's what that measurement looks like with the Purify in red, LS50 in orange, and Meta in yellow. Keeping in mind, this is not an anechoic measurement. Please consider your results will surely vary, but I just wanted to share this data with you guys to give you a realistic idea of what I ended up with. So while making my way through a number of different tracks that showcased male vocals, I tried my best to see if I could hear the results of what less distortion sounds like, as that's the entire idea behind this woofer. One thing I'm going to say right off the bat is that when you hear detailed bass, mid-bass, and lower mid-range, it's hard to go back to something that isn't exposing the same amount of clarity. I have tried hard to make this point on my channel, and this woofer is indeed another example of what clarity can sound like. In other words, when Barry White steps up to the microphone with a lot of speakers, what you might perceive as his voice, it might be his voice plus coloration from distortions, resonances, or in some examples, the cabinet walls of the speaker adding additional bloom. With this woofer, what I heard is clarity in his voice and nothing else I would declare as coloration of any kind. If this is the result of less distortion, it's certainly a good thing and it's worth celebrating. Now, another place where it's sometimes hard to hear some clarity in woofers is the lower thump from acoustic guitars. Whether it's the resonance from the guitar itself or just the microphone technique in that particular recording, it can be hard to hear separation and clarity in those situations. With the Purify woofer, I had no problem with hearing this level of details in the lower frequencies, and I found myself enjoying track after track of nothing but acoustic guitars. Now, loosening the reins on the hyperbole for just a minute, I also took note that while I did appreciate what I'm calling clarity, I must admit that I had a hard time feeling some bass impact, and I was surprised that while these appear to play down low, it's not the most robust or confident sounding bass that I have ever heard. I question and admit I'm not smart enough to answer this. When you tame distortion to the point that Purify has with these woofers, is a potential consequence might be less heft and weight in the lower bass frequencies. I honestly don't know that answer, so I'm going to leave it at that. Folks, I'm going to keep this short and to the point. I didn't fall in love with this speaker as a whole, and even with the crossover featuring some pretty high-end and boutique parts, it would be difficult for me to say this particular speaker is the one that you should be building. However, even with the pricey $380 a pop for the woofers, I would imagine that when combined with the right tweeter and some do-it-yourself experimenting, you might end up with a speaker that, when properly engineered and completely built out, folks, it would actually smack the snot out of a lot of the competition out there, and yes, even rival super expensive speakers as well. Well done, Purify. Your amps are legit and your woofers sound great. Now, do us all a favor and go and make a tweeter that's just as good as the woofer, circle back around to NRD, and we'll take it from there. And I'll see you guys in the next video.